I was wondering if I could get a copy of the letter to the State Board on Aging. Our committee sent supporting the senior linkage line, as well as information that I missed last week because of the surgery conflict, on the Rebuilding Together program that was presented by Tony Sjogren, and like a contact number and address for Rebuilding Together, so I can get that information for the scattered site and other areas in public housing.
I will talk with you after our meeting, okay, Flo, and get you what you.
Excellent. Thank you much.
Yep. So I did start the recording. We do have a quorum. I was hoping Angelique would be here by now, but I want to be respectful of our presenter's time, and I know that Tom is not able to show, but yeah, I think if it's okay with everyone, let's get started. Sound good, since we have a quorum?
Yep.
And Katie and Amy, folks will be jumping on. They typically start coming on at about 10 after. So if you wanted to wait, we certainly could. And we could do our business right now of agenda adoption and meeting minutes adoption. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so first we will do quorum. And I'm going to try and do this by memory because I wasn't planning on doing that. So Tom Weist, Janet Court.
Here.
Beth Winnick.
Here.
Melinda Ludwidzak. Angelique Kingsbury. Ellen, and I still am practicing your last name to say it appropriately. Ellen Gautier.
Goche. Goche is fine. Yep. Here.
Okay. Who else? Oh, Paulette Will. Hazel Tanner. Did I get everyone?
Flo Kastner.
Oh, Flo Kastner. Flo. Hi, Flo.
Hi.
Yeah, I think I did achieve everyone. So with that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Oh, which I will now put into the chat. So the agenda should be in the chat. Can I get a motion to adopt the chat? And I want it documented that we do have a quorum.
Okay. I move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The minutes. You all received a copy of the minutes. Are there any challenges, issues, amendments, addendums with the minutes as you see fit? If not, can I get a motion to adopt the minutes?
I move we adopt the minutes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. With that, we will turn it over. I'll let Katie and Amy introduce themselves and their mission today that they'd like to get accomplished. And with that, I'll just turn it over.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My name is Amy Morgan. I'm an associate transportation planner within our Transportation Planning and Programming Division of Public Works. Katie White, also on the call today, one of my colleagues in TPP. And we're here today to talk about the ADA Transition Plan Draft 2022 update. Some of you might remember, I'm gonna actually share my screen real quick. Some of you might remember my colleague, Kelsey Fote. She would have been here probably a few years ago talking about this plan as it was being developed. And so as part of this work now, we are kind of reviewing it. I'll get into the details, but reviewing the plan that has now been adopted for a couple of years and seeing the progress that we've made to date. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. So as I mentioned, the ADA transition plan was adopted by City Council in February of 2020. Within that plan, there are a total of 20 recommendations to help improve access in the public right-of-way. Each of these recommendations include both milestones, kind of those action items to reach those recommendations, and an anticipated timeline for each of them. As part of the Transportation Action Plan that was adopted December of 2020, so after the ADA plan, Public Works has now committed to conducting a review of the ADA transition plan on a biennial basis. And so really the kind of the goal of this review is to evaluate the progress that's been made to date and suggest any plan updates to ensure that we're continuing to make progress for improved compliance in the right-of-way. So quickly, I'll just go over the goals of this. A few of these I've already mentioned, but first and foremost, understanding and evaluating that progress that we've made on all of the recommendations that are outlined in the 2020 plan. As we're going through that review and that evaluation, suggesting any updates to the recommendations or the milestones as needed, as well as looking at the timelines. Have we met that timeline? Do we need to reevaluate that timeline moving forward? Things of that nature. Third, we're looking to update the language within the ADA plan to make sure that it is reflective of all of our most recent policy documents. As I mentioned, the Transportation Action Plan was adopted after the ADA plan, and so there's some minor text changes within that just to ensure that the language is the same in both plans. Lastly, the ultimate goal of this is really to report and update back to City Council and the public. So taking a look at kind of where we're at today, this graphic is showing our current milestone status. So just a quick clarification on recommendation versus milestone. There are 20 recommendations in the plan and there are 36 milestones. I apologize, it's fairly small. The milestones are essentially those action items that fall underneath recommendations. So some recommendations might have multiple milestones in order to reach that ultimate goal. So far, we've completed 5 of these milestones. We have 14 in progress, 12 not started, and 5 that are considered up next. So one caveat that I do want to say is that 6 of the 14 in progress milestones are something that are identified as ongoing or annual action items that Public Works has been doing and will continue to do. We kept it in the in progress category since this is not something that there's no end date in sight. There are also a number of milestones that are not started yet. As I noted, there's 12 of them. A number of these items that are not started yet are dependent on earlier steps that are currently in progress to be completed before we're able to move on to those next steps. So there's a lot of work that's happening, and there's a lot of work still to come with this plan. So some of those ongoing or annual work pieces that I mentioned that Public Works has been doing and will continue to do, first and foremost, we're installing and upgrading ADA compliant ped ramps and APS into our capital projects. We have an annual report out on the improvements to ped curb ramps, APS, sidewalks, and street crossings through the Your City, Your Streets progress report that gets reported back to council every year. We continue to monitor any issues and feedback that we receive around shared mobility and the parking and operations around that. So ensuring that nothing is becoming a barrier in the public right-of-way, like scooters or things like that. Also, constantly looking for opportunities to expand departmental knowledge and expertise on ADA topics by having staff attend training and classes as they're available. So some of the progress highlights that I want to talk through today, there's a lot of work that's going on within the 20 recommendations that are outlined in the 2020 plan. These 3 are just 3 that I wanted to highlight to talk through the progress that we've made on them. First is the sidewalk and street crossing inventory pilot project. This is really a goal of understanding what are the barriers within the right of way so that we can prioritize those infrastructure improvements to ensure that we're kind of really reaching that compliance to create a city that is accessible for everyone. Second is the snow and ice corner clearing funding. That is around, I'll get into the details of that, but funding to help kind of increase the time or decrease the time, however you look at it, for how quickly we can do corner clearing after a snow event. And then the last one I'll touch on is 2022 budget request for staffing resources related to ADA and right-of-way work. So as I mentioned, there is a sidewalk inventory pilot project that is happening currently. This was really born out of the development of the plan. There was this, a need was identified to really understand what are all the barriers, like what is the scope of all of those barriers across our infrastructure across the city. And so kind of a first step of this is this pilot project, which our team has explored different data collections, 5 different data collection methods that I'll touch on, and analyses methods to evaluate the condition and the design of our public sidewalks and street crossings. These 5 different methods, our staff and with the support of consultants actually went out to the field to evaluate this, understand how it works, and understand what are some of the benefits and limitations of each of them. So these here are the 5 methods. I won't go into too much detail, but if people have questions, please feel free and I can discuss a bit more around them. First is a manual data collection method, which is essentially staff going out there and measuring those different cross slopes and any discontinuities in the pavement, measuring that manually and entering it in. This takes a lot of staff time. It's a pretty low cost entry, but it does take a lot of staff time. It's also a method that's extremely susceptible to errors, human error, as well as just difference of how people might do, different staff might do different work. Second, they looked at a tablet-based collection method. That's this picture here. So essentially that just uses some sort of tablet that connects to this contraption that collects all of this data and uploads it to a cloud-based system. This is more accurate than the manual data collection. It still takes a significant amount of staff time to go out and set this up at various locations. Third was a GPS or GIS-based data collection, similar to the tablet-based, but they're using a smart level to get those measurements. Again, I think this has a similar, the measurements are more accurate, but there is still a lot of staff time that goes into it. And if you can imagine doing this on a citywide scale, that could take a significant amount of time. They also looked at a Segway-based data collection that can be seen in this image in the lower right here, which is essentially there's try to speak accurate to it. There's something similar to a laser underneath a Segway. So essentially, as the Segway drives, it's collecting all of that slope information of the sidewalk. If there's any discontinuities with the pavement, things like that, it collects all of that information as the Segway is driving across the pavement. So this is something that it's, of course, there's an upfront cost to it. It's a pretty fast method to collect data. It's pretty accurate. I'd say very accurate, actually, in terms of the information it's collecting. Another benefit of this is that the Segway is about the same width as a wheelchair, so understanding that, kind of getting that information as well is great. And then the last method they looked at is something called a LiDAR-based data collection, which essentially it collects a point cloud data or point cloud data system, data, what have you, essentially creates an extremely detailed model of the existing environment surrounding. So it's a lot of data. It creates a lot more information that we actually need for this work. It's a fairly intense process and also fairly expensive too. So with this, this pilot project, our staff has recently they just finished doing these different data collection methods. And so their next steps are really taking all of these pieces and understanding what are the cost benefits of each of them, how do we actually scale them, what are kind of the feasibility of how we scale these at a citywide level to collect that data. And as I mentioned before, the reason this is kind of step one of this recommendation, which is to remove barriers in the right of way. And by collecting this data at a citywide scale, we'll be able to prioritize where those improvements are happening, understand what are those funding realities to be able to address all of these concerns. And so there's a lot of work still to be done, but exciting to see this data collection piece being piloted. Next, the snow and ice corner clearing. This comes out of recommendation 3.9 to continue to address seasonal barriers such as snow and ice on sidewalks, which is outlined by the Minneapolis ordinance of 445. So in 2020, there was an additional $300,000 that was appropriated by our city council to further enhance the level of service for corner clearing. So these additional funds really decreased the completion time from what was 4 or 5 days down to 2 days on our pedestrian priority corridors. And so these are funds that they're continuous, they're there every year to be able to stay at this completion rate. There's actually during 2020 a number of budget cuts, and this was something that was fought for to stay in the budget, and people acknowledged how important it was, and so it has remained in place to date. Currently, another item that Public Works is really pushing for is to increase our staffing capacity around managing the use of the right of way and improving coordination between different partner agencies, utilities, and private developers so that we can ensure that we kind of know and are doing what we need to do within our public right of way to help advance the actions in this transition plan. And so as part of the 2022 mayor's recommended budget, there's $120,000 that is allocated for staffing resources that are related to ADA inspection, right-of-way management. And again, this is not adopted yet, but this is something that we continue to push for with the ultimate goal of hopefully having an ADA team in place to be able to really manage and have that coordination piece in place for ADA work. So in terms of some of the items that are up next, this first bullet here speaks to the sidewalk pilot project that I mentioned. Our team is, again, with those data collection methods that they went through, they are evaluating how can we scale this, what are the costs, and what is the accuracy of each of these 5 methods. This evaluation process is really crucial in informing the future conversations that are related to doing this on a citywide scale and kind of having those conversations with Public Works leadership and our city council and mayor about how do we fund this. Secondly, our Public Works team will be starting to update the 20-year streets funding plan in 2022 to include an equity or updating the equity component of our infrastructure prioritization. And so this is, again, another really important piece as we think about the transition plan. We're really looking for how can we get rid of those barriers in the right of way, and how can we do it in an equitable way across the city as well, prioritizing that infrastructure. So with this evaluation of the 2020 plan, one of the pieces that I mentioned before is we will be looking at timelines that were in the 2020 plan and updating those as needed. Something to acknowledge is that the 2020 plan was adopted only a month before COVID began. And as we all know, the year 2020 and even 2021, there was a lot of unprecedented challenges that came related to the pandemic, the death of George Floyd, a number of citywide staffing and budget impacts as well. So unfortunately, as we look at the progress that we've made to date, I think we haven't made progress as quickly as we had hoped when this plan was originally adopted. But we are still making progress. We're still looking for ways to kind of make up that time that kind of we weren't able to do the work in the same way. And all this to say, with the review that we're doing now, we're looking at those timelines to evaluate if they need to shift just within the realities of where our staffing and budget realities are today. So in terms of this update, the 2022 update to the ADA plan, over the last few months, Public Works staff has been reviewing the 2020 document to understand the progress that we've made to date on the recommendations and milestones. This month, we're coming and meeting with members of you all and the MACAPOD and the PAC to provide a progress update and get any feedback from you all, any thoughts you have on this update. And then the goal is then early 2022, we would bring this through the formal city process. And so one thing just to kind of clarify what will be going through that formal city process, we anticipate having a red line document that will have those text changes I mentioned to any of those, making the language consistent with our policy documents. There will also be an appendix which will have an overview of the progress made to date. It will include a summary of all of the recommendations, any new timelines with that work, and kind of a progress check of where are we at, what work has been done for the last 2 years on each of those items. And so those are still in process, but that's what to expect when we bring that through that city process in 2022. So with that, I'll open it up if anybody has any thoughts or questions. Thanks.
I see Melinda, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for your report, and thank you for clearing the corners in the wintertime. I own a corner property, and it's really difficult to keep that clear of all the hard ice that gets piled up there after the plows go through. So I really appreciate that initiative, and so do my neighbors.
Happy to hear that.
Janet? Go ahead, Janet. Are you on mute?
Well, I just unmuted myself. I was just waiting for you to tell me it was my turn. Yes, I want to thank you so much for this. My corners are still not clear, or they weren't last year, but I just so much appreciate the fact that at least you're looking at it and it's becoming an important to you, because it can be just really, really, really so terribly dangerous to try to crawl over big chunks of ice that are it's sometimes like ice slides that and trying to get on a bus and worrying about whether you're going to slide under it. So yes, so thank you so much for prioritizing this.
One thing I do want to note too, to that point, is that in 2022, another piece, a policy document that will be getting reviewed and updated is a winter bike and ped study. That will also help, that'll look at some of these pieces as well, and lead to some more recommendations around how do we create a better environment for winter for everybody out walking and biking.
Are there any other questions for Amy? I will say, Amy, I am also incredibly excited to see where we're at with this. I would love to connect with you now as the project, one of the project leads, to talk about our advisory committee on aging, as well as we are now updating our Minneapolis for a Lifetime Age-Friendly Action Plan, which originally had recommendations about pilot projects utilizing like community-based organizations or neighborhood-based organizations, et cetera, for some of the, just the standard residential sidewalk clearing and stuff like that. That's still going to stay in our plan, but I wanted to touch base with you to talk through some of the recommendations and ideas for actionable items that were brought up as we created this plan, just to get you up to speed, and the background and all of it, where all this came from. We, as I mentioned in an earlier conversation with you today, we just got through another round of pretty extensive engagement. So there were definitely ideas that came out of those conversations. So I'm happy to connect with you soon to talk about all that.
That would be great.
How we can both accomplish the goals in each of our plans. So.
Yep, absolutely.
And Flo here?
Yep, go ahead, Flo.
I would recommend also, because speed kills. And in alleys and driveways, have a sign that says speed. Just 5 keeps all alive. And in parking lots, 15 is really keen.
You're pretty good at that, Flo.
And for perimeter parking lot, 20 is plenty.
All right.
So we don't get people speeding through and endangering someone coming out of a parking place from between cars, crossing with a cart, and never mind all of the little kids that can pop out anywhere.
Sure, that's really great recommendations, Flo. And they might be reaching out to steal your slogans.
Yeah, and also make sure that we have well-maintained curb cuts, because those with mobility impairment issues really need them, and need with some kind of traction material on them when you get the underlying ice.
Okay, thank you for that, Flo. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Amy or Katie?
I just guess I want to point out that the city should keep in mind that the largest growing population is seniors, and it's just going to keep growing, especially as we enter the next decade. It's going to be, for the first time, the largest population. So I know biking is a huge deal, and and pedestrian safety, obviously, but thinking about the increase in older Minneapolitans being able to access public transportation in particular, especially because our winters are so long here, I just think we need to kind of underscore the importance of that. And I've seen, we live really close to 50th, and what happens is, even when the sidewalks are cleared, the plows come. And so if there could be a way to time it so that, it's like people in the hospital when they need sleep to get better, but all the nurses have to keep coming in to take all their blood, so they're not getting sleep. It's like you remedy the situation, but then it keeps getting more complicated. So, because the plows, cover the newly cleaned sidewalks. So if there could be some way to be mindful of all these things together, it would be terribly helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that comment.
Yeah,
I think that's something that I definitely think that our transportation management or maintenance and repair team that does that work, we'll make sure to highlight that just to get it on their radar. I'm sure it already is.
Yeah, because it's so, like, people are just beating their head. They're like, oh my gosh, they cleared the sidewalks, awesome. And then the plows come by and they're like, and it's bigger, bigger piles of snow to climb over than ever. So,
yep.
Great.
Okay, one last call for comments. And Amy and Katie, you're more than welcome to stay on for the rest of our riveting conversations that we have. And they actually can get pretty fun, let me tell you, I'm not joking. But we do appreciate you coming by and reporting back. That's so important, especially to our elders and aging community. Now we can go back out and have these conversations as we're managing, working our way through community and stuff. So much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Oh yeah, absolutely, anytime. Especially if you're going to keep coming back and talking about how you're going to clear snow. Come to our meeting and need time to talk about that. So, okay, well, thank you both so very much. Really appreciated. And with not seeing anything further, we will move forward. I also want to have on the record, since this is a recorded meeting, that we do now have Melinda Ludwig-Zach joining us. So, all right, thank you. Okay, our next agenda item is recruiting efforts for our advisory committee. I will be sending out where all the vacancies are throughout the city, and all of you do work and play and have relationships all across the city. So thinking about maybe folks who would be really good to have in the committee. I know we have quite a change in our council. We have 7 new council members coming on board. So it's kind of awkward timing a little bit. I really didn't want that to slow us down, although one of the conversations, if you do know someone in the wards that I'm sending out, when you have that conversation with them about these openings, maybe asking if they have a relationship with the council member that's now coming in, et cetera. The council members have to approve whoever we're putting forward for potential nomination anyways. So it's not like we're circumventing the new council. We wouldn't get this done until next year anyways, when the new council's seated. But just think about having those conversations. It would be wonderful to also be intentional on diversifying our committee a bit. We do have a provision that if someone who is not 50, but comes to the table with a real substantial, something really significant as far as skill set of what they can bring. So whether it's a gerontologist or, I don't know, someone who, let's say Beth isn't 50 and comes and, bringing all, cyber seniors to the table.
Let's say that. We can
I'm older
say that.
than 52, Beth. So I actually have a birthday coming up here. So
hey, I just hit 54. So.
Oh yeah, I'm right behind you.
Yeah.
Right behind you.
So,
but I mean, that would be an example, because really, especially in this current plan and with the additions of resiliency, and really being very intentional on the digital divide. So that would be an example of someone who isn't quite 50, and we as a committee have the ability to talk through and weigh out, does this person bring to the table what they need to bring. We do not circumvent, though, the requirement that they have to be a City of Minneapolis resident. So that's an absolute. There are also 4 seats. I believe 1 is open currently, and that's an appointee by the mayor. So where they live in the city is irrelevant. We still want to try and keep it balanced. We don't want to have a bunch of members at large from Ward 10, along with their Ward 10 representative, right? So, but that's something for us to think about too. So you'll be getting that from me. Does anyone have any questions about recruitment or the process of recruitment? Like you talk with someone, they're like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah. How is it? I know that I think I saw the vacancy announced. I think I looked it up myself, actually, but I remember several years ago seeing city vacancies announced through someone posted it on Nextdoor.
Okay.
How else are they announced? I've seen recently a colleague who works for the city posted it on her Facebook page, and I saw it that way. But do we ever, like for our committee in particular, do we ever reach out to maybe senior living buildings where people who work in the field might be good people to have join the committee?
Right.
Other ways.
We do, as a city, use a lot of our standard channels. So we have what's called Gov Delivery, and that goes out to neighborhood organizations, that goes out to community-based organizations like the Resident High-Rise Council for Minneapolis Public Housing. But to your point, as of now, it's kind of left to those organizations to decide, oh, is this important? Do I want to pass this along? I have been trying to do more intentional recruiting through my colleagues, colleagues who represent different cultural communities. So that's definitely something I've been working on, especially now that we've gone out and done this engagement and have developed some relationships and put ourselves kind of out there, boots on the ground. I'm trying to use that momentum to move forward. Again, the fact that we meet virtually still can be a concern for some folks, even though we can call in. Flo does a wonderful job of staying in the loop, and I try my best to keep her in the loop, and she calls in all the time, but folks, we've had folks do that who just dropped off, so it's not only recruiting people, but trying to find a way to keep them continuing to be engaged, right? So yeah, we definitely, word of mouth is invaluable, right? We all have our conversations. I was actually going to reach out to Georgia. I don't believe that their senior center in Sabathani is doing in person yet, but also trying to think of, church newsletters and, stuff like that. So trying to be a little more strategic with what we put out. As far as the messaging behind it, like, why would you even want to be on the committee, right? Here's the work we're doing. Here's the work we want to do. And we want you to bring ideas to the table because maybe there's something more that we could be focusing on or doing, right? Beth, so your hand was up, or you? Because then Melinda.
I was going to let Melinda talk because I see her hand is up, and then I was going to say something after.
Go ahead, Melinda.
Yeah, I was recruited by my council member. She mentioned in her newsletter, which a lot of people read, in our Ward 8, all the commissions and committees that had openings. And so I was ready for I was leaving one commission and looking for another opportunity. And so I thought I'd put my name in there. But I also was wondering about how locked in we are in having a representative from every ward. I know other commissions look to try and balance that, but they don't have it as a requirement, which helps recruit more people. And I'm wondering if you want to go in that direction. I don't know if it's part of the charter or if it's part of the bylaws. The bylaws for us would be easier to change than the actual charter. So I'm just raising that as something to think about. I know other committees do that. And it kind of locks us into trying to have somebody from every ward.
Yeah, I believe, yeah, I don't want to misspeak, but I do feel like ward-based was part of our, what they call creation language. So it is statutorily based in the city's ordinances, or whatever they're calling it. City's ordinance states statutory. So however our committee was established by council, that's there. However, it's not as difficult. So it's not a charter. It's not a process like that. It's just really going back to council and talking about recreating, because we did that with actually removing. We used to, I think you remember back in the day, Melinda, this committee was like 27 people deep, right?
Yeah.
It was just all, one day, one person from the organization would show up, and the next day we would have nobody. And then the day after that, it was someone new.
Right. Yeah.
And it was a wonderful committee. We, had a lot of conversations, got, a lot of things brought to light, but it was unwieldy and hard to manage. So when
it was a lot of professionals.
And it was a lot of professionals. We really weren't.
Not so many older residents.
Right. We were not hearing from, the whole committee was probably around age 30, predominantly, except for some of the members from the wards. But so it is very possible. That's a conversation. Definitely. I've talked with the clerk's office. They're like, why are you not, populating your committee? I'm like, it's not for lack of trying. It's just not for lack of trying. We're in a pandemic. We are meeting virtually. We have to have representatives from specific wards. If we have a ward where nobody wants to do that, it is what it is, right? council members influence that. So just so you know, I do reach out to every council member that has a vacancy to let them know that you have an opening. Could you put this in your newsletter, much to what you were talking about, Melinda? And again, it's up to the council member then of how they're going to take that information.
Okay.
Janet, did you have a question? You're on mute too, Janet.
Yeah. I thought Beth had something she wanted to say, and I was going to give her a chance to do that.
Oh,
first.
thanks, Janet. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is it ever posted in the Minneapolis Star Tribune or startribune.com?
No, not that I'm aware of. I don't know how we would get that posted like that. We have a very unique relationship with the Strip. So, and that would be something I would actually have to go through my communications department and channel to talk about that idea. But
I mean, I feel like that would be kind of a no-brainer of how city openings should be announced. The local newspaper, which
Sure.
is also online.
Right.
The readership and the audience is.
Right. I mean, it would be great just to have a whole article on the city of Minneapolis's boards and commissions.
Yeah.
What they are, what they do, how you apply.
Exactly.
The value that community brings to joining them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might be worth a conversation with, it is worth a conversation. I will reach out to our communications department and see what would that look like.
Yeah, because I feel like the Boston Globe does that. I feel like other cities have an area where it's kind of dedicated to city business and how you can get involved. And that would be great. I mean, it's great PR for the city to show that it's actively asking citizens themselves to be involved. I mean, it's kind of opening a can of worms too. I realize that, but if we want more people.
Yeah, all applications are vetted. They're supposed to be vetted. Yeah. So, I mean, there definitely are checks and balances in that. I see Janet, Helene, and Melinda, and I didn't know who went first. So, or who's?
I think I'm next.
Okay, perfect. All right. That's right.
Yes. Okay. Just a couple of thoughts here. One is that I really like the idea of it being of having representatives from the wards, because otherwise I don't think without some push that everybody gets represented. And I think it's really important that everybody that wants to have a voice has that opportunity. Now I was recruited through that's the city connections thingy, the thing that comes up in February. So maybe we could have a table at that again and use that as a recruitment tool.
That's a wonderful suggestion. I am actually the lead this year. So excited.
Ooh, excited. We're going to have good food for sure with you as the lead,
well,
right?
we're still working through what all that's going to look like.
But I mean, I think that active people from all over the city do attend that.
They do.
So
they do. And as of now, it is in person. We are planning.
That's what I know that because I'm already considering signing up. I saw that. On the newspaper thing, I don't know. I have a problem with the Star and Tribune in that I refuse to pay them what they want. So I'm up against the firewall on virtually all their information other than the headline. The community papers, though, I think is another way to reach out.
Oh, sure. Like the Spokesman Recorder and Southwest Journal and The Alley and things like
all
that.
Of those.
A bunch of those went out of business, of course. Southwest Journal is no longer, although rumor has it something else will be replacing it now. But
what's no longer?
Southwest Journal.
Oh, yep, that's right.
I mean, a lot of them went bankrupt, and it's super sad. But maybe we could get the Star Tribune to give information about the city like free so that you don't have to get through the firewall because it's information. I mean, that's what newspapers originally were founded.
It should be. It should be.
Yeah. I mean, I understand they need to get paid too, but
they occasionally let something sneak through as a public service. But they're even hiding some of the COVID information, which is ridiculous. You know, they at the beginning of the pandemic, they said that would be free. Well, now a lot of it is behind their firewall as well. So
Okay.
Um,
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for that, for bringing up the conference. I shouldn't say I'm lead of the whole conference. I'm lead, though, of one of the biggest parts of the conference, and that's the exhibit hall. So thank you for putting that out there. Ellen,
Yep.
Melinda, who were you next?
Me.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yep. I was going to say that I would, depending upon where you are looking for candidates, definitely go to your healthy seniors groups. There are 3 in the city,
Yep.
and I would say that you might be able to find some active people involved that way. The other is, I think, did you mention that it was also on Nextdoor Hail that information was distributed? Because I know that city organizations can post on there.
Not there. It's not posted by me. What is done is that we have a separate information newsletter, if you will, that goes specifically to our neighborhood organizations. That's led by one of my colleagues to do that. And so we do send it out to all of our neighborhood organizations. I also, in my department, we also have the advisory committee on people with disabilities. So, in tandem, we do send, here's for, the boards and commissions that are housed in NCR, and here's the openings.
Okay, and I've also worked with the Star Tribune to provide information and organize presentations through community education. And one of the gentlemen who came to speak at one of our events, his name, if I remember correctly, was Eric Roper. He writes a column specifically on interesting questions. And I think that a question about how all these volunteers work for the city would be really useful.
Yeah, I agree. I do. I'm starting to really like this whole Star and Tribune thing. I'm loving it. So I will see what we can do. And of course, we have a relationship at the city. We have direct contacts and stuff like that. So like, how can we make that work? So
yes, and their readership is exactly what you want. As far as participants. So that was my big comment. Yeah.
Okay, Melinda.
The Star Tribune has that inspired section on Saturdays where they list volunteer opportunities. So we could look at just posting a little thing there for our committee.
Sure.
And the same with that, isn't there a volunteer group, Christina, that lists opportunities? I forget what it's called now. It's kind of like a metro-wide volunteer opportunity organization.
Yeah, there's RSVP is the main one that I know of, which is Retired Senior Volunteer Program.
There's another organization. I can't remember the name of it.
Okay. Yeah, I can look at that.
So,
hard to find.
But I know the Strib has that Saturday inspired issue, and they do have a column of volunteer opportunities. And a lot of them are like for home delivered meals and visiting seniors. So there's some senior focused ones in there.
Okay.
In addition to all the other ones.
It might even be a great idea to propose a story for an inspired story on someone who has been a very active volunteer for the city for numerous years or had some sort of impact, which could then drive attention to the idea of other people volunteering. And I wondered if, Melinda, if you were talking, Volunteers of America is the umbrella organization over RSVP, and perhaps that's what you were.
No, there's another one. I can't remember. I can't remember the name of it, but it's an organization that helps other nonprofits find volunteers.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of a volunteer support organization. I can't remember the name of it.
And
is there all also ages? I think that one covers all ages.
Is there also an organization for retired Minnesotans or something along that line? It's been mentioned to me before.
Oh, no, right. It wasn't. That's national.
Yeah,
though.
But there was one that I've heard about that is people in Minnesota, a retired organization. I'll try to figure out or find it again.
I mean, wouldn't it be great?
Flo here?
Yeah, Flo, go ahead.
In communicating back to officials, we need to focus also on the positive. So much of what they hear are the problems and the complaints and what's wrong. And every time they do something, what we need is a thank you for taking a certain vote, taking a certain action, for doing something right, rather than just having complaint proposals. Oh, this is the problem, and this is a problem, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. And thank them when they do something right.
Well, so Flo, I get what you're saying, and that would be the individual, your individual
council member,
yep.
or county board too, and state when state board of aging, for example, the governor's office does a program of benefit to those elders or aging, to actually send a letter from McCoa appreciative of their innovation, their effort, their proposal, their new policy.
Yep. Oh,
and thank them when they're on track with our vision plan, rather than only hearing from us when we want something. Give them a thanks and a high five when they do something supportive of our vision.
Yep, Flo, I'm going to stop you right there because we're kind of off track from what we were talking about. Although once I get Melinda's question, what you just said, Flo, is a good segue into our work next year. There is definitely opportunity to provide support for an initiative that our government or whoever introduces that we find is that we also support it. It's a little touchier. With that, I would have to just touch base, I think, with the city clerk, just to make sure we're not seen as lobbying something that's counter to what the city wants to do, or that we're supporting a political trend. I mean, we got to make sure as an advisory body that we are not unintentionally being perceived as doing something that's maybe not ethical, that it supports a political agenda or something like that. So not that we can't do it. It's just a little more of a tricky thing, but I totally agree with you, Flo, 100%. Melinda?
Yeah, that group is called Hands On Twin Cities.
Oh,
in fact, I think they may operate that column in the Inspired section on Saturdays. I think they're the ones that post the opportunities. So
maybe that's the route that we take, where I don't have to go crazy with all the processes of communication department. Not that they are wonderful to work with. I don't know where this would lie in priority right now. We've got a lot still going on. There's the upcoming trials. There's things that are happening. So I don't know if they have the staff to loan to try and fix that. So we could definitely touch on that. Angelique and I, in our conversations, we have talked about how we're moving forward then in 2022. A lot of that work, I feel, is going to be based on the set of recommendations that we had just talked about in that special meeting, as well as, like what our role is with that, what city department's role is with that, etc. What I would like to do is in January, I would like us to commit those who are on the committee to reach out to the new council member if you have one. And just drop a line, hi, if you want to talk, blah, blah, blah. And if you do connect, we come back to our conversation in January and lay out, for lack of better terms, kind of a work plan or a goal setting of what we want to accomplish in 2022. So we have something legitimate to work from, that we're not, every month going, what are we going to have on the agenda? And, 1 month it's this over here, and another month it's Lord knows what, right? So we're a little more intentional with how we move the committee forward, especially in accomplishing the action plan. Like, seriously, I need to start taking notes. They're doing the snow study because that was in our action plan for them to do it. And I'm just finding out about it, right? Which is on me. I need to be a lot more intentional. But maybe we do an action plan check-in every committee meeting, right? Have you heard something that I don't know? Have you, worked with a neighborhood organization that's involved and I don't know what's going on? Our action plan covers the whole city. So, as of now, we do not have a meeting in January. I think we'll let that stand. Let folks just get their holidays in and figure out how that's going to look, especially.
You mean December?
Mm-hmm. Oh, did I say
Okay.
January? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's my birthday month. Maybe I'm like, I just don't want to do nothing. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, as of now, December, we historically have not had a meeting in December. So unless there's something really pressing that we feel that we need to talk about, we'll just keep it that way. What do I have under unfinished business? Oh, update on the letter for trellis and the senior linkage line. So, Ellen?
You had mentioned an upcoming in-person meeting in February that is still on the books that you're organizing. Yeah. Is it possible that we will begin meeting again in person early in the next year?
So it is very possible. It is very possible. As of now, the city of Minneapolis hasn't, even though we are top in the nation for cases, we always like to be number one. So far, the city has not, nor has the mayor, as you probably heard. The mayor's position is to still not declare a state of emergency. We are still under the mayor, or our mayor's, I meant governor. The governor has no intention of declaring a state of emergency. As of now, our mayor still has one, and there's no plans at this point to lift it. We revisit it again, though, January, I feel like it's January 3rd. When we resume, that's when that conversation happens. As much as we would want to meet in person and stuff like that, if we still are operating under that declaration and to where the clerk's offices meetings are virtual, then we aren't able to make that choice ourselves. So I will definitely keep you in the loop. We are actually having a contingency plan for our Community Connections Conference if we have to go all virtual. So as we're planning in person, we are definitely planning to easily transition to all virtual if that's what we have to do. So yeah. Oh, and Flo, you had asked earlier about the letter for trellis. So we have not written a letter yet. We are still in the process of that conversation. I know Melinda sent out was it yesterday? Some information on Trellis's thought that it might be better that we wait for the new council to come in. Is that what I quickly blew through it? Is that accurate?
I'm not sure. Is there a separate letter or the same letter that's also being directed to the senior linkage line?
That's the same letter. So we haven't written it
okay.
yet. It's not been written. So I just wanted to give that update. Melinda, if you want to say anything more to that.
Just that we got a response from Trellis on the points that are important to them. And our subcommittee hasn't had a meeting to go over that and draft a letter for your approval as yet. So it's in the works.
Okay, beautiful. Lastly, we have update on report to council regarding Minneapolis for a lifetime engagement recommendations. So my urban scholar and I did go in front of council to provide an update. It was very well received. They didn't have any questions or concerns, not about the recommendations, which were quite a few that we were adding. They seemed to really like the approach that we were being very intentional on specific recommendations per community as well as, just across. They also liked the fact that we are adding 2 new priority areas. So we're keeping housing, transportation, health and wellness in the majority of action items that were recommendations and action items that were under those. I'm restructuring it to where a lot of it's the timeline kind of to what we just heard with the transportation action plan, that I think there's a move of not having plans be stagnant, that we should always be striving to achieve and continue good work until it's not feasible, relevant, or it's no longer considered good work, right? So I am definitely having with goals, with benchmarks, like still the what is it, 15 affordable housing units per ward. Oh no, it's 35 affordable housing units per ward by 2025. Like that has a definite end date. But then, but what then, right? So they were really, really receptive to all of that. And then the new recommendations underneath it. And I was also surprised that they did not have any issue with with a few items that I'm taking out. It's possible because I did highlight that a lot of the new recommendations do address those issues that I'm taking out. It's a different approach, because the approach that we tried to take to accomplish them clearly wasn't working for a myriad of reasons. So yeah, it went really, really well. Here's the timeline. So Gabby and I are in a mad dash today after this meeting to finish up our report. So we can get it to my management, make sure that when it's posted, it's ADA compliant. When it goes to council and mayor's office, it is also ADA compliant for, readers and stuff like that. At the latest, we're hoping to have it in mayor and council's hands and posted on our website by Monday. And then December, we're going to take a breather, although some of the action items I'm already starting to plan. I've already got things in motion. Like when I heard from Amy about this pilot project, I'm like, hey, I need to check with you because I need to make sure that my action item is in alignment with the great work that you guys are doing, right? And so there'll be a lot more engagement. This is also where I'll be leading on the Advisory Committee on Aging to help with that and to get the word out about different opportunities to weigh in, and to talk about ideas of how to accomplish the recommendations, like bridging the digital divide. That's, the actual items is to have the county program, the city program, cyber seniors, and adult education all come together. And what does that look like, right? So it's really kind of that getting into the weeds stuff. Right now, the goal is to have that full-on action plan that has all those recommendations, how we're going to achieve those recommendations, and what does success look like, to council for actual adoption of the plan. Right now, it's receive and file, and even our current action plan is technically receive and file. I'm going after a little more teeth this time. I want them to officially adopt the Minneapolis for a Lifetime action plan as a plan that we are all in agreement of accomplishing, right? By the end of Q1 in 2022. So by the end of March, which is kind of a robust, like aggressive during a pandemic timeline. I mean, I can write this stuff all day long, but if community doesn't have buy-in, it doesn't matter. So where I'll be a little challenged, and Gabby is leaving me today. Actually, that's her going ways tonight. So that's very, very sad for us because she did such a phenomenal job with this project. But then the engagement is on me, unless I find someone to help me with it. So we'll see if I can't dig that up. And so if anyone of you hears of a grant that's floating around there to get people's, I have no problem writing a grant. That is kind of it for me. It's weird not having Angelique here because I feel like I've just been a talking head. And I'm not very good at that because I don't believe that that's how we should be communicating with our community partners and you all. So anything that anybody wants to add? We're at 2:10.
Nope, I think you've been great and you haven't been a talking head. And if you need another set of eyes to run by some of that, let me know.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, I would love to. Well, actually, I do plan on sending it out to the whole committee. But all right, this is our final product. These are the recommendations that came out of it. We've got the data sets. We know like how many people, or like the surveys that went out, how they identified, you know, with their race and et cetera. That got a little clunky. Race was no problem, but there was an opportunity for people to check multiple boxes, and there's like one person and throws off a small data set. So we're figuring that through, but we'll also have all of the conversations like verbatim and all the meeting notes, like just the raw notes available. People will see the survey. We'll have the surveys, raw data of how people responded available. Our community-based organizations, same thing. So it's going to be a pretty in-depth report, you know, and then percentages of all the respondents. We had 110 interactions like we're having now. Half of those were in person. The majority of them were in person, and the Latino community was virtual. So we'll have a breakdown of those in person for race, ethnicity. We'll have a racial breakdown of that too, to ensure that, you know, I'm feeling pretty good that the populations of our BIPOC and LGBTQ plus community is going to be the dominant percentages, where white people will make up the smallest. We did not collect demographics with our first go around of engagement, so we aren't able to compare, but I can say with confidence, as the one who conducted the majority of these engagement sessions, it was just the opposite. We had very few communities of color represented as far as voices. It was predominantly white people that we spoke with. So the one thing I can say is comparing numbers of the first go around for the Minneapolis for a Lifetime action plan, the first iteration, which was adopted in at the end of 2016, really implementation 2017. We exceeded our engagement efforts, our points of contact, by 26%. So yeah, I know. I was like, how did I do that? I'm like, woo, yeah. That always makes me feel good when I can go stand in front of council and say, yeah, we kicked some butt during a pandemic, right? So does anybody have any questions for me about that work, that body of work? Any of the other conversations we had today? If you, and Flo, are you hearing me? If we even get off this phone call, you're like, oh, darn, I wish I would have given Amy and Katie this bit of information, stuff like that. Feel free to reach out, or those of you who want to send me an email. I will put out to the rest of the committee members that like open invitation too. And I will ask for the PowerPoint for those who weren't able to see, although because the meeting's recorded, I could just probably send that link so people can watch the whole meeting and hear the whole conversation. I think that's it for me. We get 50, if we had nothing else, that's 15 minutes of our lives back. I always appreciate that.
I think it made a big difference to have Gabby helping you this time when you were reaching out to all those communities.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I also had Jessica, who the program, the Urban Scholar program, ended early August. And so I pushed to have them on longer, but Jessica did find herself employment, so I was able to keep Gabby on longer. So that was fine. Yeah. But yes, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, to have another person, just one, let alone two, we were able to like kick out, like I'm talking to an elder, that she's talking, each one of them have an elder. Like we were able to really have far reach in a short period of time, and still doing it safely. We were outside. for the in-person interactions, except for the LGBTQAI plus. That one was masked. And so it was really easy to have decent numbers, you know.
Yeah.
And they were the ones who were creative too with the surveys and sending it out to community-based organizations and sending it out through other channels. And I used my neighborhood folks to send out the survey. So I was surprised to get 59 people responding to a survey during a pandemic.
Yeah.
So, and it was online, you know.
I think the pandemic was double-edged because I think sometimes we were able to get more engagement because people had more time where they were home and able to use technology. So.
Yeah, for sure. Like the big conversation now is the value of being virtual and how even if we go back to in person, whether it's this conversation or just the way we do our individual business, the way the city does business, that there is certainly value in having at least some type of hybrid model.
Absolutely.
Well, to have more voice.
I have to say, I had a presentation earlier this week with Medicare Updates. Okay. And it was Trellis came and spoke, and it was an online presentation. And during the presentation, they announced that they no longer send out paper copies of their update materials. Oh. They said that if you can print them off from their brochures on their website. And then someone said, and if you don't have a printer, you can tell them what pages you needed printed. But I said to them, you know, normally when they would speak for community education pre-COVID, we would have 50 people attend. We had 12 when it is online. So they are not reaching. And so I agree, Beth, that we're perhaps having more people complete surveys and things like that because they're not as busy. But it's harder to reach a real deep level of the population.
I think it depends on how the marketing is done and access, of course, because I just know with cyber seniors, our numbers exploded of how many seniors were getting help.
But those are seniors. But those are seniors who have internet and have technology.
Well, they don't always. Sometimes they're going to a library if it's open again, or a community center, or their senior residence has it. But they themselves don't always.
No.
Right. I mean, access and equity is always an issue, no matter, that we always have to be mindful of course.
But I think with this population, it's even more so.
Right. That's why, to me, hybrid's the way to go. For those who can access online. Sorry, my computer's dying. So I had a quick run and get the battery charger.
Yeah, because then you can do both, Christina. I agree.
Yeah, I think that is really the way to go. And like I said, bridging the digital divide, which includes efficacy, of not just handing people internet or a laptop or both, but having them have a good understanding of how to use it. So, and so that's in our action plan. So we'll be able to talk through that and move through it and what's working with that and what's not. Because we got 5 years, this action plan. So this last action plan, I kind of set it up for 3 years, with the fourth year winding down, fifth year evaluating. I'm setting this action plan up for 5 years of implementation and then wind down and evaluation. So this is going to be a lot longer going because we got some pretty ambitious stuff, like ensuring our elders who want to have access to digital mediums can use it feeling good. Getting a system in place where we're removing snow. So we got some big things, and who knows what next pandemic or something that's going to happen. To me, slowing down and being intentional has never been more pronounced for me, and how I truly believe my work and the work of the city and the work that we as a body and focusing on our aging community, we need to slow down and be intentional and really, really think through unintended consequences and be prepared with a backup plan and all of it, right? Flo, how you doing? Flo, are you on mute? Maybe she just had to leave the phone. Oh, I see her. Hi,
I was
Flo.
on mute.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to give everybody an opportunity to say their last goodbyes, their last piece. Any comments, concerns? Are we feeling good? How you doing, Flo?
Well, medically god awful, but otherwise hanging in.
Okay, perfect. And I will connect with you to talk through information, to get you information, like the PowerPoint that was shown today.
Great.
Okay. Well, if nobody has any.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah, you too, Flo.
Absolutely. Feel better, Flo.
You bet.
Well,
Happy holidays to everyone. See you in the new year.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Yeah, we'll be in 2022.
See you next year.
Yeah, there you go. I know, isn't it crazy? It's just crazy. All right. Well, I always enjoy my conversations with this committee. You all offer so much and you help me move through what I need to move through. You're invaluable to me. So, yay.
Well,
Nice.
I appreciate how
Bye-bye.
responsive you are, Christina, because you're lovely to work with. And I mean, this whole
Yeah,
committee has
yeah,
been
yeah.
it's
you.
rewarding. So
Thank you. Good.
And just a reminder, Christina, your
Yeah.
704 cell is always mailboxes full, so it's impossible to get in touch with
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. Yes, you're not the only one who has brought that up to me. So I will be fixing that the moment I get off this call. I
Alrighty.
promise. I commit.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
okay. Moving, we
Bye.
adjourn. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I second. Yeah.
Perfect.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Leave a doorknob.